on Zoom is Jim Hotelling from Hillside Garden Landscaping. And Jim today is going to talk to us about an insect pest that's iconic to early summer. So Jim, can you go ahead and just start off by telling us about that?
Yes, this insect is called a Japanese beetle. And it's really actually kind of interesting with this metallic coloration. And, it's kind of late, it's almost midsummer. They've been out for quite a while. And some of the damage you'll see is you don't see the insect, but you see the damage. Other places you will still see the beetle. So it's a little late in the season for the peak of them, but they're still very much around.
Gotcha. So what kind of plants does this insect bother?
One of the favorites that they really bother is roses. And the roses, they'll actually dig right down into the flower and just chew at the petals of the flower and really make so they don't open up right and look, pretty lousy. Other plants, ornamental cherries, fruiting cherries, apples, crab apples, Japanese maples, azaleas, and then there's a whole list of other perennials and what have you that they'll eat. So they can be pretty, they don't eat everything, but they're pretty good list.
I mean, I was about to say, that's a pretty long list. What can be done about that, though?
Well, there's a couple things. It's a real simple solution if they're in your roses and you have a little bit of time and you like to put in the garden, roses and perennials, is you can actually have a little can of soapy water and just knock them off into it. You may have to do that for a few days to do that. Some people actually use gasoline, and if you're a little more of a sadist, you could do it that way. But in any case, that would work fairly good on small items. But if you look at this crabapple tree, that's a very large tree. And you can't really set up there and knock the insects off that tree. And pretty much, you're going to have to spray that. And at this point with this tree, the foliage is gone. So there's no sense of doing any spraying. And if we look really close, there's no more insects either because they eat everything.
So would that tree likely come back?
That tree will. It's pretty much leafed out and done a lot of its work for the year already. And it will probably still put on a little bit of growth yet this year. And even if it doesn't put any new growth, the chances are it'll come back next year. But what happens is if it gets defoliated like that year after year after year, it'll weaken the tree.
Gotcha. Okay, so what about the traps that people put out to trap this insect?
Well, traps are good to make people feel good, like they're doing something, because they get these bags full of beetles. But, the way those things work, they use an attractant, like a sexual attractant, in those traps to bring them in. So you could have no beetles and put those traps out, and you'll have all kinds of beetles because you're attracting them from all over the place. So realistically, if you want to use those, the best thing to do is to, buy dozens of them and put them all over the neighborhood away from your house. They go away from you. So really, other than make you feel good, they really don't do much good.
Okay, well, that's good to know. And where do these insect pests come from?
Well, if anybody's ever heard about having grubs in their lawn, which is another whole thing that we could talk about, but grubs is the larva stage of the Japanese beetle. So a lot of times early in June, when they first start to emerge, they emerge from the ground. And I've seen it where you walk across the lawn and you see these whole clusters of these beetles coming up out of the ground, and they'll go up and they'll fly. So they spend that part of their life cycle in the ground. And again, you could have completely grub-free lawn, do all kinds of chemicals and make it so you have no grubs in your lawn, but they fly. So the field next door or the neighbor 2-3 doors up has them, they'll fly down and you can still have them on your plants.
Not really a huge fan of bugs, but this was actually pretty interesting. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us today.
Thank you. This is Jim Hotelling, the home gardener from Hillside Garden Landscaping.